The Berlin Conference, the meeting that changed Africa forever. Why do African countries have such straight borders? Why are there over 2,000 languages and dozens of ethnic groups divided across multiple countries? To answer this, we have to go back to a meeting that took place far from Africa, in Berlin, Germany. A meeting with no African representatives, but one that would change the continent forever. This is the story of the Berlin Conference Europe before the conference. In the late 1800s, European nations were expanding fast. The Industrial Revolution had made them more powerful, but also more competitive. Africa, with its vast resources, became the focus. Europeans wanted raw materials like gold, rubber, palm oil, and ivory. They also wanted markets for their goods and influence. Some explorers and missionaries had already entered parts of Africa. But now countries wanted control. This competition was turning into conflict, especially between Britain, France, Portugal, and Belgium. To avoid war, Germany proposed a solution: host a meeting to organize how Africa would be divided peacefully. What was the Berlin Conference? The Berlin Conference began in November 1884 and lasted until February 1885. 14 nations were invited, including Britain, France, Portugal, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and others. The host was Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany. Together, they created rules for how to claim land in Africa, like notifying others and proving effective control. But here's the part many don't know. No African leaders were invited. No kingdoms, no tribes, no elders, no governments. Decisions were made about Africa, without Africa. How they divided Africa. What came next was known as the Scramble for Africa. At the Berlin Conference, European nations agreed to carve up the continent. Each country wanted its share, and soon borders were drawn. Britain focused on areas from Egypt to South Africa. France took much of West Africa. Belgium claimed the Congo Basin. Portugal took Angola and Mozambique. Germany took parts of East and Southwest Africa. But these borders ignored the people living there. Tribes were split across new lines. Enemies were placed under the same rule. And ancient kingdoms, like Congo, Ashanti, and Zulu, lost autonomy. What was the impact on Africa? The results of the Berlin Conference shaped the next century of African history. Between 1885 and 1900, almost 90% of Africa came under European control. This led to forced labor in mines and plantations, loss of land and culture, resistance movements that were often violently suppressed, and the beginning of colonial rule that lasted until the 1950s, 1970s. Even today, many African conflicts and political divisions can be traced back to these artificial colonial borders, drawn in rooms thousands of kilometers away. What Africa looked like before the conference. But here's what history sometimes forgets. Africa was not empty. Before the Berlin Conference, Africa had kingdoms, trade routes, cultures, and governments. The Mali Empire had universities in Timbuktu. The Kingdom of Congo had centralized administration. The Ethiopian Empire had kings, churches, and armies. The Benin Empire created complex bronze art and city walls. Africa was not waiting to be discovered. It was already thriving. Legacy. Why this still matters today. Today, Africa is moving forward. Nations have gained independence. There are 54 countries, thousands of cultures, and millions of stories. But the effects of the Berlin Conference are still felt. Ethnic tensions, border disputes, economic systems created for foreign benefit. That's why understanding this history isn't just about the past. It's about seeing how the world was shaped and how Africa can continue to reshape itself. The Berlin Conference may have redrawn a continent, but Africa's story didn't end there. In fact, it's just beginning. Subscribe to learn more African history with truth, pride, and respect.